Welcome, everyone. How are we doing today? We ready to get started? Let's get after it. I hope everyone got some pizza to eat. Welcome to Launch Fishers. I hope your 2024 is off to a phenomenal start. We like to start the year of, kind of this thinking of, if you're going to start a business, now's the time to get after it. The start of the new year, really thinking, let's get going. You've been thinking about it in your time off for the holidays, change of mind, you've had a little break. What do you want to do? You've got this thing you've been thinking about. And, I think it was probably September, October, we talked with the team at Innovatemap, and we said, what would be what could we do? What would be the title? And they came up with a great title on this concept to company. And we let them kind of run with it. And, this is a great time to bring this out, to bring this to you guys. So thanks for coming out. I look here real quick, and I'm not going to be long-winded because I just want to get into this. We've got a lot to go through, and Mike's going to do a great job leading us. But I look around, and I have this is a great feeling here of looking at who's in the audience, of thinking about students here that are from Ivy Tech, thinking entrepreneurship. I want to own a business. I want to run a business. How can I be successful? I look around at members at Launch Fishers that I see that are doing it and living it every day, being successful, sometimes struggling, and that's part of it. I look at members in our community that are here, that have come in from outside that want to hear this message. I look at, our leader, John, that's here, that's rolled out and starting another company that's back. Thanks for joining, John. I look at some of us here that are investors in startup companies that are kind of in that give back mode, and that's awesome. I look at guys that are here that have moved from out of state that I'm getting to know that said, you know what, I want to relocate my business here in Indiana. This is a great, not only in Indiana, but in Fishers. This is a great community, central Indiana. This is where I want to do it. This is where I want to grow the business. So there's a lot of cool DNA right here in this room. And, I hope that we take this hour to listen and learn, meet the people that are around you, and have a great session. So again, thanks for coming to Launch Fishers. I hope that you find this as a welcoming place, a great place for entrepreneurship, vibrancy, and thinking all those great things. So thanks to the team at Innovatemap. Thanks for Mike Reynolds. I'm going to have Mike come up. Mike's right behind me. He's going to come up and scare me here. Thanks for Peter Dunn for joining us. This is going to be awesome. I'd love to hear Pete speak. So I'm going to turn it over to Mike. He's going to talk a little bit about his company and Innovatemap, and then we'll have Pete come up. So let's get started. I'm ready to roll out of here, walk off stage, and just be a part of the audience and learn. So let's get started, and thanks all you guys for joining us today. Mike, come on up. Good to have you, buddy.
Yes, great. All right, welcome everybody. So first off, let me thank Launch Fishers. It is always welcoming to come here and especially be around an entrepreneur scene. And my goal for this, Pete's goal as well, is that this is valuable. Okay, so that is my hope for you all with this content. So with that, I'll kind of jump right into this. This here. So talked about this. One topic that we thought was very valuable is really talking about concept to company. And that isn't necessarily a temporary moment, but as you go from an idea, you're trying to create a company, then trying to grow that company, and even trying to scale that company. How you bake concepts, how you validate them with the market is really something that certainly Innovatemap feels qualified for. I've obviously started a company myself, but want to just share some tips and tricks on that, and then ultimately hear from a success story in Peter Dunn, who will be wonderful and entertaining. And we will have Q&A in that portion too, so get your brain going with some things to talk about. So in terms of agenda for today, I am going to touch a little bit on who Innovatemap is and what we do, just to have some context to our world and certainly what our area of expertise is. But then I'm going to really dive into one particular topic that is so important from concept to company, and that is the concept of validation. Validation of your idea, validation of your market. And I'm going to share some frameworks that we certainly use at Innovatemap and share some stories on some best practices, some do's and don'ts. And my goal in that is to maybe leave you guys with something that's actionable. After that, we're going to have a conversation with someone who's been through it. And I'll sit down with Peter and we'll talk about, I want to get to Pete obviously very quickly. But then we're going to have some nice conversation around the topic and then leave it as much time as possible. That's why I'm glad we started a little early for Q&A with this group. Sound good? Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about Innovatemap. We describe ourselves, well, first of all, we're a professional service that services the entrepreneurial and tech scene. And the way we describe ourselves, we're a digital product agency. So our skills are really strategy and design services, hyper-focused on digital products. And a digital product to us is SaaS software, digital marketplaces, websites for certain, mobile apps. If your idea has any digital component to it, starting that idea with us, or certainly bringing us in to help with what should be built, what could be built, and obviously the strategy and then the design for it. We're very proud that our designs are actually designs that work. These are not paint jobs to Innovatemap. We have been around 10 years. We're a team of 25, a little over 20 people here in our headquarters in Indianapolis, and then we also have a New York office. So we've been able to have more of a national reach for the entrepreneurs we help as well. And really, our goal is to help people dream, design, and deliver market-winning digital products. So just to kind of unpack a little bit about like the way we think, we believe a great product is well built. You have to have the technology component down first. You know, but we believe a better product is both marketable, valuable, and usable. Marketable, what it means it sells, it resonates with its buyer, it is value, it solves the problem that you intended that it solves, and then it's usable. Nobody goes to training anymore, clicks on help as they interact with digital products. It has to, leverage modern UX practices and so forth. And these are things that if you know how a software company or a digital company gets these things done, it's with excellence in a product team. And so a little bit of the vision behind this, when I started this 10 years ago, I've been in digital products for 25 years. I led product at Aprimo, that was a MarTech company that exited in 2011. And as I was thinking about my next idea of what to do, one of the things that was stopping me from doing actually a tech company play is a company like Innovatemap didn't exist. So I built the company I wish was available to me if I was an entrepreneur trying to do a tech product, which was to give them access to A-caliber product talent at a time where it's very challenging to W-2 that. And yet at the same time, you're seeking product market fit. So it's the expertise you kind of covet most. And so how we get this done, really 4 competencies, and I'll touch on this and kind of expand to some of the offerings that we'll do. So we've got our product management and our product design team, and they're very focused on the actual application itself and making sure it resonates with the user base. So it's very important that your product resonates with the user for the value and usability comments I mentioned earlier. We've also got our brand and product marketing team, and they're worried about the buyer. And so they're worried that your digital product resonates well with the buyer. So they're worried about how you're easily positioning your product, conveying its feature value, go-to-market tools such as websites, sales decks, pitch decks, things like that. So any way that you want to explain your product to market, and really the beneficiary of our product management UX work is really the coding team, where we're thinking through those hard things for them. And then the beneficiary of our product marketing brand work is really your sales and your marketing team. So we're very focused on the product and getting that right, so that as you make investments in engineering, sales, and marketing, your ROI on those are high, and your company ultimately reaches product market fit faster. So that's what we do. So moving on here, hopefully that makes sense. All right, so a little bit about, I said we've been around 10 years. We've at this point helped over 300 companies. And some of the outcomes, MVP to market, first revenue, first customer. Obviously, if we can continue and the client is doing their job of hiring and selling and building a great team and a great company, and we're taking care of the product side, outcomes like an exit, raises are things that we help them with and are part of. So a couple clients here, Authentics, Your Moneyline, these are clients where literally everything that you've seen from them, from their site, their brand, their words, and their application, we helped with. Couple here, Fisher's clients, FormStack and Amplify, to call out a few, but just to give you a name and idea of some of the companies we work with, okay? Press there, okay. So let me start with this. So that's what we do. I'm gonna really quick it now that part is over. I'm gonna hopefully talk about something that we consider ourselves helpful in, and that is validating ideas. And just to give you an idea, these are things that are typically done with an expertise in product management, just of the competencies I had shared earlier. For many entrepreneurs, you are actually wearing the hat as the original product manager. So it's very typical for the entrepreneur to be the one that owns and has the product vision and has to do the original founder selling. And so you're the one who's on the front lines of actually doing the majority of the validation. To one day have hoped to have nailed the right patterns for your business to equip other people eventually your sales team, eventually your product team, with the insights that you gleaned during those early days. So we're going to talk about that because that is such an important piece as you're validating your idea. So a couple points on this. This is really hard. Okay. Before I dive into this, although Innovatemap and our best practices do apply to very well to digital products, I'm going to say that I know we've got a lot of hard tech in the room. We've got professional services in the room. The framework that we're choosing to share today is applicable to any business, and including myself. So when I started Innovatemap in 2014, no one had any idea what a digital product agency was. And I'll admit, I made a lot of mistakes. I'm going to share some of those not only on behalf of like clients we've worked with, but ones that I've done myself when I started Innovatemap. In terms of, I had a bunch of ideas. Candidly, I had probably 30 things that I thought we could do. And through my early validation, about a year into the validation, there was about 8 that were validated by the market, meaning someone needed, had pain, wanted, we could do, they would pay for it. So I just want to highlight that validation, and it doesn't end today, and I'll talk about that as I get into the frameworks. But I certainly want to just caveat, this is not exclusive advice to just a digital product, and hopefully that helps everybody. Okay, moving on here. Okay, so when you're starting a business, lots of questions, and I'll just say validation, conversations, early research, and these are not 6-month field studies. So when I say research, I mean conversations, candidly. Your goal should be to start eliminating unknowns. As you're out validating your idea, the more doors you can close, you're winning, right? So if you've got hypotheses and assumptions, get out there and validate them. And I'll talk about some best practices in that, but like it could be, is this, do people like my name? Do they like this idea? Is this a real pain? Would you buy it? Is there anyone else doing this? Lots of things on your mind. And all these things you're going to try to be answering in those early days of your entrepreneur idea. The best advice that we would share, and we've got some Innovatemap team members here. I'm going to have Katie raise her hand real quick. So Katie's our VP. She runs our product strategy and research. So a lot of these concepts, she is the expert in the room if you want to hit her afterwards. But one thing that we've seen through the years is as you're validating, you really want to obsess over the problem. And I know you're really proud of the solution and you can't wait to get to the solution, and you may be in love with your solution. But the most successful founders we've seen obsess over the problem, and that guides them getting the solution correct versus obsessing over the solution and hoping somebody wants that, okay? And in tech, and I'll say in any company, if you build it, they will not come. It's not necessarily how that goes. And so I really want to talk about starting with the problem, okay? So I was touching on this, but people really get excited by the solution space, and I was guilty of this myself. We see this with a lot of founders that walk into our office where they have this idea, they want to see this idea come to life. Another challenging thing here, and they really got to get to the balance of product market fit. So I'll just pause and just say, product market fit is that balance between getting the solution side right and getting the market side right. So if you ever feel yourself, give yourself a check. If you're ever feeling, not a literal check, that'd be nice, but like check yourself if you're ever weighing yourself too heavily on one side or the not. So if you're doing too much product work without actually validating with the market, maybe it's time to take a time out and validate some things. And equally with the market side, if you're consumed with just talking with people and you're not giving some thought to how that feedback translates to your product, it's a very important dance to go through in those early stages. We'll meet founders that have a great idea. They have 100 ideas. They're going to get the budget to do 10 features of the 100. What are the right 10? Well, their success is on how well they map that solution to what the market wants. That's kind of the recipe of success, okay? And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Okay, so here are some framework, and I'm going to touch on it lightly, just so you guys have greater context, and then I'm going to spend the majority of time on the first one. So, this is through us doing this 10 years and kind of my background, this is really the right order for your idea, okay? And don't feel bad if you haven't gone in this order, but I'm going to highlight maybe you go back and complete a step, okay? So the first one is you have an idea, got to validate the market for that, okay? And when I say the market, it's really, and this one I'm going to dive into is, okay, is there a market for this idea? What are the pains? What would they pay? Is my solution really going to solve? But it's really taking that idea and making sure that there is a market for it. When you know that you have landed, that there is indeed a validated market for your idea, now your next worry is, how am I talking about it? Okay, and that starts to become the message market fit. If you were worried about how you talk about it before picking your market, it's going to be really rough, right? Because think about if you had 15 potential markets for your idea, and you kind of hone in on maybe 2 or 3 to focus in. Now, as you make investments in the words, what you're going to say in a sales call, the words you can put on your website, you're not worried about 15. You're worried about a very focused market where you can actually connect with them and resonate to maybe their pains at a greater level. So before you really start obsessing over the words, make sure that you have obsessed and maybe aligned on a direction. Won't be your final decision, but a direction on your market. So after you've kind of figured out the markets that's maybe the best fit for your idea and how to talk to them, now you're worried about value. Okay, so when you're starting to worry about value, you probably have customers, you've probably sold it, and now you're wondering, I want them to keep using it. And this is when you start to obsess about, I got the foot in the door, right? So something was right about my idea, something was right about my market, something was right about my messaging. Now I want to stay there. And this is where you're really starting to obsess over the product side of the product market fit. Where am I adding values? What are the gaps in my product? What are the gaps in my ideas? And then finally, when you feel like you have reached and filled those gaps where you're like, I have got a strong semblance of product market fit, got the market down, I've kind of advanced the product to really be, I got something going here. It's all fuel on the fire and go to market. Now it's spent on marketing and sales, right? Because I trust if I got 5 sales reps, I don't cringe at how they're describing the product. And I don't fear that they're talking to the wrong person or saying the wrong thing, right? So it's really important to get some semblance of product market fit, and then you can start validating your go-to-market. Am I using the right marketing channels? Am I using the right regions for sales? Am I using the right methodology for sales and things like that? So this is a good framework to go through. Like I said, I'm going to spend time on the early stage, which is the idea to market, okay? So really, product strategy and research is really where you want to start. So starting to validate things like, are we solving real problems for this market? Is this problem painful enough that they would actually hire your service or buy your product? And that feedback is gold. And are we solving the right problems for the people in this market? So you might have the right demographic market, like it's this role in this company in this industry, but then there's the secondary, once it's not demographic, but it's the psychographic. Who has this pain and who's wishing there was a better way and things like that. So let me start with this real quick. I'll go back. Finally clicked really fast. Of course. So before I get into the good stuff, and maybe some of this painfully resonates with many of you, and it has resonated with me. I've done all these wrong, and certainly we've seen clients do these wrong, but I do want to give a couple core do nots. The first one is don't feature hunt. So what is feature hunting? It's like, hey, if I build this, would you like this, right? Or here's my screen, what do you think? You're really like leading the witness in that case, and you're not getting any data that helps you make a better entrepreneur decision. You're just kind of getting good feels. They're fake. They're vanity opinions, honestly. Because it's typically things where people are going to give you a yes, no answer. Would you buy this? Would you buy this if I built this? Yeah, I don't want to offend you, so sure, right? That's the kind of conversations that happen as you're an entrepreneur, right? So be very careful not to feature hunt and really diagnose. I'll just say, what does that mean, Mike, if I don't have features? It's just seeking an answer in your conversations as you're validating with a question that simply just gets you a yes, no answer. You can do very little with the yes, no answer. If they said no, you don't know why. So how do you fix, what's your next step? And if they said yes, it's guaranteed a false positive. So speaking of false positives, friends and family, this is a real rough one for entrepreneurs, okay? Your friends and family, I mean, unless they're in your ideal client profile, your friends and family are typically your fans, okay? They're not your target market. And so they will give you false positives all over the place. I did that when I would share like the Innovatemap idea with friends. They would be like, oh, Mike, it's awesome. I always wanted to start a company. That's awesome. Good for you. Didn't tell me anything. It just made me, right? But if I would talk to actual founders or heads of product at existing tech companies, I would get very different data. Yeah, Mike, I don't get it. Or why would I buy that? Well, I'll tell you, what actually is my pain is this. Well, we could have solved that. You got to be very careful that I very much advise against not getting the false positives of socializing your idea with family and friends. Those honestly have value. They're either therapeutic for you as an entrepreneur because it's a lonely ass kicking time of your life, but they're fans, and that means they're marketing. So those meetings are marketing moments for you. They are not validating moments for you. So if you can meet with a friend and basically, hey, this is what I'm doing, and that might open doors, and now you've equipped them to go talk about to others, that's great, but they're not gonna give you back typically the data that your target market or potential target markets would. The other one is surveys. You guys, there's a time and place for surveys. So surveys are quantifiable validation. They're not qualitative validation. Let me explain the difference. So surveys are quantifiable. They answer simply the questions, how often and how many. That's not what you need to know when you're an entrepreneur. So surveys also rigged by how you wrote the question. That's a different science, but are just going to tell you how often or how many. There's a time when you've got an existing business and you're trying to scale where you might send surveys. How many of our 500 customers are happy with the feature we just sent out? That now a survey makes sense. You can't have 500 conversations. But as you're trying to validate ideas, you're having you're having qualitative research, which is really conversations, open-ended questions. And I'll touch a little bit on more on as I get to the pros, but I would just say surveys is not your friend when you're an entrepreneur. Okay, in the early stages. And don't look to be proven right. Don't be defensive, and too many defensive founders are so in love with their idea that they will not take anything that is told them otherwise. I had a meeting, it sucked, he hated the idea, I'd screw him, right? That's okay, well, there was gold in that. Like there was probably feedback you should be paying attention to. So just be very careful not to be looking to always be proven right and only take. When I was pitching my idea at Innovatemap, I had a lot of positive conversations, and I remember the two where they tore the idea apart. And those were my most two important conversations as my entrepreneurial days. Because I really reflected on that. What did I not say? What did I not how did I fail to come across? Did I not describe the product well? And just a variety of reasons. You want to make the most out of those negative conversations. They're the most actionable for you and your business. So what are things you could do? Start with intentional conversations with potential users. So talk to people who more than likely would be the eventual user of this idea, and really be asking them open-ended questions. So how do you do this today? What problems do you solve? What do you wish your current solutions did today? And you want to shut up, right? And let them talk. They're giving you gold, which is why you don't want to seek yes, no answers or feature hunt or things like that. But you really want to be out talking to potential users, okay? Another one would be potential buyers. And in many instances, these are opposite audiences, okay? Where I'm going to sell into one audience, but the eventual user is probably something else. This is really common right now, right? Where you see a lot of B2B, and your money line is actually a great example of this, where Pete is selling into businesses. So some semblance of his messaging needs to resonate with the buyer, but then people in the company will be using it and are going to form an opinion of this brand and the experience of the software. So there's a balance between that. You need to get both angles of it. Even the way you saw how we structure Innovatemap, they're very two distinct audiences to any company, certainly as an entrepreneur. There's the people that would buy it and the people that use it. Have the framework to make the distinction. Some things will be similar in terms of how you talk about your product at the proper level, but just know that you're going to get awesome feedback for both. Some will influence product features, some will influence marketing and messaging, okay? Finally, another one is talk to subject matter experts. A lot of times people will think that their idea is unique and novel, and even when that is the case, even when you think you're approaching your idea different than anyone else, that's just in your mind. Your conversations will put you in a box that is familiar to them. And so you're going to want to talk to subject matter experts who will equip you with a depth of how you can maybe differentiate yourselves against perceived competition. I know you might think you have no competition. You will have perceived competition, right? Where the box that people will put you in. So if you can talk to subject matter experts and really ask them open-ended questions about your idea and how you might be able to differentiate or what solutions exist today, they're going to educate you on some blind spots that many entrepreneurs typically have, okay? So just wanted to give that. Hopefully those are some good takeaway tips. Like I said, this is a good framework. If you didn't take a picture of this, really, I'm going to not repeat it just because I want to make sure we get to Pete, but really at the stage you're at, be passionate about the problem. That's the one thing I would leave you with. You're going to naturally be passionate about the idea. And certainly if you're coming from a problem in an industry that you want, product is well suited to solve. I encourage you to continue to think about the problem, and the solution nuances will really hone in on that. And that's going to create a successful business for you. Okay? All right. I'm pressing it. I swear to you I am. Okay. All right. So with this, kind of shared, I kind of gave you a lot of advice, maybe drink from the fire hose. But what I really wanted to do, and certainly this is the way that I learn, is I like to hear from experiences. And that's another, I'll give you that advice as well. As you're out having conversations to validate your ideas, also I encourage you all to have conversations with other entrepreneurs and learn from their experience. I know you can read a book, and that's great. That can get you theoretically smarter, but it's an accelerator, certainly that I've seen in my starting Innovatemap, is to learn from someone's experiences. And so a goal of today is to not just drop a bunch of theory on you like I just did, but to also hear about stories with that in action. So with that, I'm going to call up Peter Dunn. Peter Dunn is the CEO and founder of Your Moneyline. I'm going to let him explain what Your Moneyline is, because he's got to test his position in messaging too. That's right. But anyway, I ask everybody to please welcome Peter Dunn.
I wore a blue jacket, like the photo and what you have on, and I shaved my head so we look like twins. Give me the glasses. Yeah, so that's the key to success. Buy a blue jacket. That's the takeaway. All right.
Great. Well, Pete, we'd love to have you for the benefit of the group. Tell us about Your Moneyline. What do you do, and what's the company all about?
Sure. We're a group of professional financial problem solvers. Our job is to improve financial stability and financial confidence for people through their employers. Said a different way, we solve financial challenges of employers by fixing the underlying financial challenges of their employees' financial lives. I think all of us in this room know when you're stressed about money, it is really hard to do your best work. And you find yourself making decisions against your best interests. You quit a job you love. You blame your employer for the challenges you have, even though they might not be their fault. And so you make suboptimal decisions. And so what we do is we make sure that people can stay and do the work that they love by getting their financial lives out of the way.
Great. So what we're going to do, Pete, is I'd like to connect from maybe the theme of, so we were just talking about from concept to company. So you came to us, and now one thing, if everybody knows Pete was Pete the Planner, or still is Pete the Planner.
I don't know. Maybe it's gone. I don't know.
If you've, Pete's been in financial services a long time. So when he had come to us, it was definitely one of those founders that saw the problem firsthand. So I will admit, like to some degree, Pete had seen the problem and had an idea. But how did you start? How did you go about validating that Your Moneyline was even a valid idea?
I was an individual financial planner for years here in Central Indiana. And in 2005, which oddly enough, there could be people in this room who did not see 2005 because they're young enough to have seen 2005. 2005, about 2 miles from this very location, I was at a client's house. They made about $700,000 a year combined. They were 2 partners at law firms, which even in 2005 makes you a Rockefeller in Central Indiana. It's a lot of money, still is a lot of money. And I left their driveway 90 minutes after our meeting, and I thought, they're a disaster. They've the worst financial situation I've ever seen in my life. Yet they made $700,000. So think how crazy that is to think they have all the money and the resources in the world you would ever want, and it's not working. And so in that moment, as a financial planner, my job, Mike, was either to fire them and go find people's money that I could invest because they had no money to invest, and that was my job, or figure out a way to fix them to then make them a good client. So I chose the latter. It worked. I started getting passed around Central Indiana of people in similar situations. And by 2009, a CEO came to me and he said, we have 2,000 employees. Do you think you can do this for them? And of course, like any idiot, I said yes. Then I went back to my office and figured it out. And then it worked. And then the problem shifted. How do you scale that? How do you change the lives of not 2,000 people, but millions of people? And we've spent the last 15 years trying to solve that problem. How do you change the financial life of people through the behavior and the decisions they make around money?
Great. So let's for the sake of the conversation, when you had the scale problem and said, how do I solve this for businesses at scales? What were some of the early validation exercises and conversations that you had on that?
Not enough. That's why I would say I'm not a big rear view mirror sort of person, but I will tell you that we drug our feet for a good 5 years because we built what we thought people wanted as opposed to validating it out in the space. Our website was a brochure. It was a learning management system. It required people to voluntarily go to it and decide to then go to it again. And we assumed that they liked videos. And then we assumed that they liked short form articles. Then we assumed, so we're just literally throwing and seeing what stuck to the wall. And it wasn't until 2019 or so till we started asking more serious questions. The pandemic clearly threw a little bit of a wrench in that. Although, Mike, I will tell you, it validated an idea we didn't even know existed, which was let's have a live stream audience. I mean, during the pandemic, I did 600 live broadcasts from my home office to our clients. It turned my home office into a television studio, which is not good for a marriage. It's fine though. And then after that, though, then it really became of like really understanding what individual participants wanted, not just the buyers.
So in this phase, what are you most worried about? What's the right solution? Figuring out what the buyer wanted, or were you trying to validate the idea, or really more what the solution might be? Where was your head?
Yeah, biggest concern at that time was probably engagement. Of we have it, your employer bought it, you like it when you use it, you don't use it enough. Fast forward 5 years, to some degree, that's still a challenge. We spend a lot more resources and time and R&D trying to figure it out, but that was definitely the biggest challenge. And I'll say just an entrepreneurial lesson altogether that was going on during that time, albeit a maturity issue. 2019, I was figuring out how do you clone Pete the Planner, which is a really immature way to look at your business. Now I am like, okay, how do I clone all of these amazing people I work with? And when you're trying to clone yourself, you're not seeing the talent in others. You are not recognizing that you need different ideas than your own. And so the biggest growth for me in the last 5 years is believing and pouring into a team, which I think, again, if you start out as a solo entrepreneur, yes, you are the only person, right? That is by nature what you do, but growing isn't about replicating your skills. It's about finding different skills within other people.
So when you realized that your solution couldn't be a cloning machine for yourself, and it was a combination of team and tech, talk to me about how you got to the conclusion that was maybe a necessary solution that required both and the balance of both.
I think the more I would personally use technology, whether I was using Strava or Waze or any consumer tech that we all use on a regular basis, the really good stuff you find and I'm not talking social media, you find yourself addicted to, you find yourself naturally interacting with it. It makes sense to you. And there was this dissonance between the experience we were delivering to people that it just didn't have that. It was counterintuitive at times, or there were too many clicks, or there was the wrong amount of white space, and it just didn't feel like something you want to use. We kind of just threw our hands up. We ended up reaching out to Innovatemap, and we decided to just not tear it all down, because that sounds negative, but we decided to agree that we're willing to consider anything to change it. At the same time, we rose capital. I'm a grammar expert, really, is why I'm here.
I'm going to be no better.
We raised capital at the time, so we raised just under $3 million in 2022. And so we had the resources because we had a little bit of a market, and then we were able to pour in a better look at product and brand, and that's what we've done over the last couple of years.
It's great. I'm going to stay on that. I will speak on behalf of our team. So when Pete came to us, he was a great client because we knew the problem was real. We've been living it 10 years, been basically validating the solution for 5 years. So we knew this was a real problem. He had a real good handle on who he wanted to target. Just really, we needed help with the product solution for it, and then probably even the go-to-market solution for that. So talk to us about, like, when you engaged us, what was in particular the questions you were hoping that we would answer, and what validation phase you were really looking to achieve during that?
I'm going to tell myself a little bit here. I think I knew I was in trouble in a good way when I didn't know what to ask. And the questions asked of me, I didn't even understand. And I think there's that moment as an entrepreneur where you can get mad because it doesn't go exactly the way you want it. I remember coming away from those first 2 meetings thinking, okay, I got to go figure out what in the hell they're actually even talking about.
Do you have a good example?
I think I honestly, it was all around product. It was the concept of product. And I think the idea that you all are in this room today and we're having this pretty deep dive on product, whether you think of your business as being product centric or not, is an incredibly valuable experience, because I hadn't even considered the idea of how to validate and to build a product. And so it was those questions in the early discovery process of working together when I knew we just had to turn ourselves over. And so here's a specific example, which you probably wanted 90 seconds ago.
Good.
That I've been a writer and a content person in personal finance since 2005. And so just an example as to what that means. I've had a syndicated radio show for 15 years, which means nothing. It's what people now call a podcast. Okay, so I have a podcast. I've written newspaper columns for 10 years in USA Today and various places. I've written 12 books. I've done a ton of TV. That is to say, I'm a content machine. Like, you sneeze, I'm writing a metaphor about how it means something about your 401k. Like, I'm easy, 800 words, 20 minutes. The problem is, when you put all that on a website and you call it a product, it looks like the Cheesecake Factory menu, right? Like, people go to it and they're like, I don't even know what to do. I don't know what to order. Sure, I'll have Santa Fe egg rolls, right? That's what I'm going to order because I don't know what to order. That was our website. And so your team sort of just said, okay, what has to stay? What has to go? These things aren't actually packaged together. We had so many micro brands within the brand. Like, I have an idea and I just create some alliteration around it, and all of a sudden it was like Budget Boss by Pete the Planner. And your team was like, stop doing that. And that helped. So it really, a big part of it was just less is more in a very serious way.
Great. So one thing I just want to fast forward to maybe today.
Sure.
Okay, so one thing that we touched on was maybe early validation, but validation, and I mean this even for Innovatemap, it doesn't end. It's just a different type of validation. So at this point, your team is 40 people in size?
Just under, yeah.
Just under 40 people.
And we came to you were 9, for what it's worth. Yeah.
So what's on your mind now? What unknowns are you looking to have answered and are maybe considering validating during this phase?
We are validating the use of AI and surfacing people's real habits through their data. So, if you will, people can now connect all of their accounts to yourmoneyline.com. So then people get a look at their financial lives, at their accounts, all these sorts of things. Through the use of machine learning and AI, we go through, we surface things that look weird, we surface patterns, we compare those to the people's goals, we compare those to the people's money personality, which sounds like something weird that's in the back of a Cosmo, but it's not. You actually have a money personality. There are 4 distinct types. And then through that, we have AI say, tell this person what's really going on here and what's going to be the impact of it. So Mike, that's a very long-winded way of saying, we're going to get to this predictive state where I can say, yes, today is January, what's today? 30th, maybe? Mm-hmm. Today's January 30th. People don't go to the website to learn that. They generally already know that. But what it would say is, on April 17th, you're going to have a financial crisis and we see it coming. Click here right now and we'll fix it before it even happens. So that's where we're going. And on top of that, we aggregate all of that data, we anonymize it, we strip everyone's identifiable information off of it, and then we feed it back to employers and say, you have a financial crisis within your organization around housing or transportation or student loans or childcare. And because of that, you need to make better benefits selections for your people that will improve their life. It'll decrease the amount of people leaving their jobs. It'll increase productivity.
It's great. I'm going to add on top of that, just something we see for a lot of other clients that even corresponds to something. I think, Pete, you're doing that very well, and I know his product team. But let's just take AI, for example. A lot of people are like, hey, I need AI in my solution, and so I'm just going to check the box and integrate to an AI tool, ChatGPT or something like that. That is, once again, thinking of the solution first and trying to find a problem, right? That is checking a box. And so like to Pete's comment, if you think about that feature, that is really him, one, understanding that he has a market that already has trust in his product. And I imagine the type of things that your users would want of your product is what is influencing how you might be leveraging AI. Any reaction to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a spookiness about AI. I don't think that's, I mean, we all kind of feel that way. And when you think about AI combing through your financial life, it gets a little eerie. So that trade-off has to be compelling. It has to deliver something to the fact. I saw we have an experiment going right now, and I got the data last night. And it's this woman who is deeply in debt, and this is a real person. We ingested all her data, we fed it through our model, and she'd worked so hard over the last 2 weeks to decrease her dining out. But naturally, what's gonna happen if you do that? Her grocery bill went up, right? And so you take this idea, and then you sort of let it play out within the model, and you say, okay, this is good, but you're going to need to put a budget around the grocery store, because if you don't, 6 weeks from now, you're actually $400 deeper in debt. Now that's important, because think about how many times you've tried to change a habit, whether it's food for nutrition purposes or fitness or health, and you don't get the insight you need, and before you know it, you're just eating tons of kale, right? You're not happy, and for some reason you're gaining weight, right? It's one of those things of like, I'm doing the work, why isn't this working? So this is, you know, when you stop trying to go out to eat, you know how, like, what a sacrifice that feels like? Imagine going through that sacrifice, 6 weeks later, it's worse for you. That's terrible. And so that's sort of the stuff we're dealing with right now.
Right. Well, I want to get to questions. So one final one before I turn it to Q&A with the audience. The room's filled with a bunch of current leaders, future leaders, entrepreneurs. Any advice for them in this phase?
I think it's the questions you can't answer are the most informative. When I was going to raise capital and I was going to friends and family or investor groups, when they would hit me hard with something that I either had never heard of or I was embarrassed I couldn't answer, believe me, the first reaction was just straight shame. I was like, oh God, I have no idea. And you just feel stupid. The pitch doesn't go well. But guess what? They just created a roadmap for you of how to figure out things. There was one group that passed on us, okay? They passed on a $500,000 investment on us because of this, and this. And while I didn't necessarily disagree with at the time, I didn't even understand the importance of why they thought that was important. 9 months after we closed the round and we're starting to gain traction, I emailed back the head of the fund and I was like, dude, you were right. You were 100% right. That was exactly what was wrong with my business. I was like, have a good day. That's all I had to say, because it's the truth. It's like every time something uncomfortable happens where you're defensive, I think it is the sign that you're on to something. You just need to calm down, try to solve that problem. We are fortunate to have had a really great couple of years. We doubled our revenue in 2022, 84% in 2023, and we're aiming for 87% here in 2024. And I think it's because we're willing to dig in on the questions that we previously weren't able to answer, which is tough when you fancy yourself an expert and may even say that in your bio, and you can't answer a simple business question. Then it's humbling, to say the least.
Great. Well, let's do this. Anything's fair game, by the way. I mean, we've got entrepreneur, we've got validation. But I'll turn it to the audience if anybody's got a question. I'll go here.
For those that don't know, that is called an informed question. You know what you're talking about. We believe that tone matters. We believe that people will make behavioral changes when they feel heard and represented, and the advice is empathetic. We think it's really hard for big companies to do that. They have too many stakeholders. We take great pride in serving people on all ends of the financial spectrum, whether their biggest challenge is not getting evicted or choosing what private equity fund to invest in. And so it's our willingness to be inclusive of people's financial challenges that I think make us quite the competitor. And also to that note, I don't want to, we lose very infrequently, okay? And I don't say that of like within competition. There's not as much competition as you think, or perceived competition. You are right about the record keepers and retirement plan advisors, but they tend to like us because then we can get people to invest more in what they're doing because we can fix their past and present. So we don't really compete as much as you like. In fact, we license a lot of content to a lot of them anyway. So great question. It's something I think about a lot.
Good.
Yep.
John?
All right. So question related to so-called blue ocean opportunities or places where the market isn't defined or even the potential customer doesn't even know they have a problem. I'd be curious, what hacks or tips have you both used or your experiences in markets like that?
Yeah, good question. For me, John, it's write down your unknowns, get those answered. And it's literally an exercise of writing unknowns. And I'll use an example, like obviously we're helping entrepreneurs, and I certainly knew the indie tech scene, but there's probably, like when we went into New York market, we knew that there's obviously tech scenes we could probably help, but wow, do we learn a lot of stuff the wrong way. So many questions that even just pivoting any component of the product market fit. So in my instance, I was tweaking the market side. Price point, pain, even the way we describe, it's just very different. So I should have known that, and in hindsight, before I ever would go into tweaking our offering set, I would say, what are the questions I have in my mind? And I try to get those answered. And so that's literally, it's an entrepreneur exercise of write down not your reasons why you're going to this new market, that you're going to self-justify them in your head. What are you worried about and what's on your mind? And honestly, I'd start having conversations with people who might help with those questions. You don't have to, you can accelerate actually getting them answered with people who've been there, done that. That's one thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, I'll go more vertical specific. There's two industries, healthcare, nonprofit healthcare specifically, in K through 12 schools, where their biggest challenge right now, those businesses, is retention. Can't keep doctors, can't keep nurses, can't keep educators, can't keep principals. You could argue it's a byproduct of the pandemic and those times, but it is a reality. So when we look at those green pastures and we say, okay, well, how can we help them solve their business issue through what we do? And if you can get someone's financial life fixed, they're less likely to look at their job and say, screw this, I'm out of here. In a more specific example, John, as you know, is there's a program called Public Service Loan Forgiveness. That's if you work for one of those types of organizations and you make student loan payments for 120 months, then the rest of your student loans can be forgiven. We've become experts at that so we can serve those marketplaces. Last year, we got over $40 million of student loans on track to forgiveness for our participants and our clients. And going to school superintendents, going to hospital CEOs and saying, hey, look, you've got a problem. You've never heard of public service loan forgiveness. You combine the two and you find yourself a market. And so, but that being said, we've tried that same thing in other verticals and have been wrong. We tried that with municipalities, and I'm not here to be cynical, by the way. I'm just not interested in being cynical today. But if you go to certain government leaders and you say, hey, we can fix the financial lives of your people, it doesn't resonate as much as you might hope. So sorry for being cynical, but it's also true. Sorry.
Good. Yeah, one other thing I'd add there, John, is, so both of us gave an answer that's market focused. If your unknowns are maybe product focused, which is, hey, I'm serving this market, I don't know what to invest in very expensive code next. Or I go back to some of the things I was sharing earlier, which is go to your users and ask them open-ended questions about workflow. How are you doing this today? What are unmet needs? Where are you doing this today? And get them talking about, and that will maybe influence where you need to take your product next. You know, or certainly you might have 10 ideas, but it'll validate those 3 of the 10 we were thinking are where we should invest in engineering next. So, okay.
So general question. So I'm in love with my solution, right? How much is enough? How many interviews? How much time? What's the trigger point? How do you know when you've got enough information to go? I want to go now. You're saying validate. How much is enough?
Well, my first reaction is don't view the validation as an event, but as something that's running in parallel always. It is qualitative, not quantitative. So it isn't science. Like, I'm not going to give you an answer. It's got to be 8. You could have one conversation that answered your unknowns and set you in the right direction for a week or 2. Very honestly, right? I've had many times where it's like, I'm trying some new offering and I'm worried about how I'm going to describe it. So I'm going to take an at bat and I'm going to try it. And that didn't go well. So I'm going to take another at bat. You know what I mean? So like, feel you're still an entrepreneur. So be at peace that you're always validating, you're always experimenting. You as the founder are being completely held responsible for being on the front lines and recognizing all patterns to translate that back to your team so they can follow your lead. So I would say move would be my best advice. And don't get paralyzed by the thought of, I got to go stop for 2 months and validate everything. I try to find a way to weave that into just your DNA.
I'll say one thing, which I'll slightly get out over my skis, so feel free to come over here and punch me.
No, I'm not gonna do that.
This is how this idea has been explained to me, and it's been helpful for my small brain. If you think about the theory of product, there's 2 bookends to this. There's the Marty Kagan approach, which is to validate. Then there's the Steve Jobs approach, which is, I know what the people want, we're going to build it, and they are going to come to it. Now, you did hear Mike, of course, say earlier that if you build it, they will come is not a thing in product, and I do agree for the most part. But I have found myself trying to answer that exact same question of, at some point, your subject matter expertise does have to be acknowledged, and it does have to say, God, I mean, here's the fact of the matter. I've sat down with 28,000 people, that is a real number, and talked about their financial lives. That is pattern recognition. There is something in that. And I've gleaned something from that, even though I wasn't running an experiment at the time. So when we go to validate experience for us, I'll still just say, I still think, let's go now. Let's go now. And then we just have to be willing to measure it and be willing to, our board meetings tomorrow, my first quarter board meetings tomorrow. So I have to, of course, be a grown up and occasionally go in there and say, remember that thing I swore was going to work in the 3rd quarter of last year? Hey, I was wrong. So I was wrong about that. So I think that's part of it too. But as an entrepreneur, you're used to being wrong, right? Everything feels wrong. So it works sense.
So I have a question about the size of prize related to the problem. So 120 water used to be 120 water audit. I think that was one of your clients. My question is, their original plan was to go after residential customers, and she realized the size of prize of that problem was too small. So walk us through, like in your business, Pete, or in your experience, Mike, what size of prize? So you raised $3 million, Pete. You had a market size of X, or your 200 million ARR was going after this much, opportunity, et cetera.
I do think we've suffered as a business, going way back, to not thinking big enough. Like
Yeah.
and that is for sure not thinking big enough. Just talking to some friends in the room, including yourself, David, beforehand, it's like, as these little events have been happening over the last few years, they're just micro events that happen in real time. It's not till you look 5 years past and you look back and like, holy cow, we've climbed a bit of a mountain here. So for us, maybe this is the wrong way, but we are looking at an ultimate valuation of saying we want to be valued at this amount, and it's not because of the money that comes with it. It means that if we did this, we did this, and this right, and then it validates that that's the thing. So if what I'm hearing from you is how do you find the juice worth the squeeze? For us, it became this valuation of saying, to do this, we have to do this, this, and this. And that's just from a number standpoint, that's the way my brain works. It's just to work backwards off of something.
Yeah, the one thing I'm just going to be very honest about, investment will change that, right? So it's an accelerator to think of a bigger market, right? And so when you say size of the prize, and I had about a dozen founders run through my head, most of the time that they thought bigger was because someone made them think bigger. And that might have, if that's aligned with your vision for the company, that's good. So if you're sent out and saying, I want to build a $100 million company, and you can't figure out how to get more than 500K for your idea, you actually need that kind of thinking. But when someone actually writes you a check and says, I now need you to make 5 million with this check, that now will force you, that's in the product market fit, they've dynamically changed the market element. So you might be like, okay, to get 5 million, I'm not going to get it from my current market, right? So I've got to expand markets I'm going into, or my product is not robust enough for me to go, let's use enterprise. So to hit that, I probably got to start selling enterprise, right? And is my product enterprise ready, right? Or maybe I got more of a, SMB product, and I have to invest more in some of the virality features of product-led growth so it expands. Either way, the check that it ultimately should be aligned to you as a founder to where you want to take the company will be an accelerant. And I would say most of the founders that I've seen have to make a massive product market pivot. It was because that was an important stage of that journey that was honestly influenced by people helping them or forcing them to think bigger.
I recently looked back at our pitch deck for the fund, and some of our hypotheses could not have been more wrong. Like it was like a different language. I just can't even believe that ink was used to convey those ideas. That being said, there are some things that we didn't even consider being a possibility, which have come to the forefront, which are now our current everything. And with not that we're considering another capital round here or there, but if we did, it would expand that even more, right? It would just, the world of possibility continues to open. And I said this before, and I just want to make sure I get it in, because I don't want to give you all entrepreneurial advice, because then I'll feel like the marriage experts that always used to be on Oprah, and then they'd be divorced like 6 weeks later. Like, I don't want to be that person. But this is just, you have to get your company to a point where you're able to hire really talented people. And that has been probably my biggest takeaway, my entrepreneurial journey is, and talking to other entrepreneurs, like, I can't get good people. And it's like, okay, I feel you. Whatever it takes to get to the point to be able to get really good people is the journey, because otherwise you are looking as yourself to solve all of these problems, and you need more than yourself to solve these problems.
Yeah, it's good. I do want to, because my mind went to the investment, but I do want to answer that just because you asked specifically about 120 Water. And that's obviously a local company we're all rooting for. That was on the founder. So I do want to share credit to that. That was on the founder, who, I know Megan well. Megan had this passion inspired by her kids to have them have better water at school. And so she was selling to schools kits that they could actually measure their water. And then literally there was legislation passed that school corporations needed to have healthier water. Good on her to think bigger. So that's founder product, that's founder, pattern recognition, and just really understanding her audience. So she might have just been inspired originally by, better water in the mac and cheese for my kids at school. But really, it was really her diving in and continuing to validate. And I know for a fact that Megan had to validate whether she even had the wherewithal and the funds to compete at a B2B level versus more of a one faucet per home level. So a couple of questions. I know there was one there, and then one more.
Yeah, so Peter, it sounds like you focused on growing the team, and that's been a huge part of what you were doing, but you've also reached out for outside help here with Innovatemap, and I'd love to figure out how you ask yourself the question of, I need outside help, or when to make versus buy, right? And how you guys came to that conclusion, and how was that path?
Did you seed that question? Because I've got an amazing answer.
I did not.
We've done this in
Brand.
every area of our business. We've gone fractional in every area of our business until we're able to validate an idea in a process. As Mike and I were talking beforehand, part of their job is to help get you off the ground. And by the way, if it works well, you're bringing the team internal in many regards. And that's what we've done. Because of our work with Innovatemap, we have a vice president of product. Because of the, using our fractional CFO, we now have an internal finance person. So I'm a huge believer in areas like this of renting, if you will, instead of buying, because I could not possibly accumulate the talent within my organization for the dollars I spent to work with Innovatemap. And on top of that, this is the 1000% truth. I wouldn't even know the questions to ask in a product leader interview if I did not work with Innovatemap. I would have no clue. I was still felt like I was an imposter, but at least I ended up with a really good person because I understood the basics of product. Same with finance. I could never have hired a CFO to start because I don't even know what to ask. But now I'm in a perfect position because I know what to ask.
I'm going to just pile on top of that. I, as an entrepreneur, I preferred fractional excellence all the time. So the majority of the people W-2'd at Innovatemap are product-minded, design-minded experts. And for anything that isn't core competency, we partner. And I like finance as a great example because it's really understood. I pay a fractional finance team. I'm not going to W-2 a CFO, a controller, and a bookkeeper. But for the price of one hire, maybe I get fractional excellence. I feel the same way about legal. I feel the same way about biz ops, HR, not HR in terms of culture. I run culture, but in terms of clients, compliance, and benefits, I have HR partners. And I would say Innovatemap, I got 25 W-2'd employees, but I would say the Innovatemap team's about 35 people, as I've got partners. And I would say as you're scrapping an entrepreneur, it's a great place because you can get excellence at a fractional cost. That's a real hot strategy for entrepreneurs right now. So probably time, one more question. We'll go this way because.
Awesome.
Yep.
So my name is Nicole. I'm a B2C founder at the idea stage, non-technical. So you were talking earlier about surveys and when's the time to do surveys and have all the conversations you can have. We've had all the conversations. Our idea keeps on getting validated in the way that when we're talking to someone, they're like, oh yes, this is how your product would work in my life. So have all that. But when we're talking to people to raise money to build something, there's like, we want to see traction. Do you have any idea or tips of how we can demonstrate traction? Because the last thing anyone wants to do is sign up for an app that maybe will exist in 6 to 12 months.
For me, the answer is learning how to sell. It is that's not judgmental as much as observational of like, okay, it's validation. Now I've got to be able to tell a message and get you to love it. On our sales team, we talk about our good salespeople can make someone love what we're doing in 30 minutes, so much so that they answer the very essential sales questions. Why change? In other words, why do I need to do this? Why us? Meaning why your solution versus someone else? And why now? Why not wait 6 months? And so to me, it's like you have validation, you have an idea, it's time to sell. It is time to get them to love it so much that they pull out their checkbook. And for the younger folks in the room, checks are like these pieces of paper that people used to write. I'm sorry. I'm getting older. Yeah.
It's great. So, well, on behalf of Pete and I want to thank everybody and certainly thank Launch Fishers for the time. Hopefully, like I said, our goal with this was that it was valuable. And so hopefully everyone got something out of this and really appreciate the time and wishing you all the best on your journeys.